tonight I wanted to just spend a little bit more time talking about because this has been a big thing on social media, talking to millennials, talking to these younger brides, and specifically what I want to talk about tonight is how we can convey the value in what we do, what we bring to the table to these younger people, whether it's brides or grooms. And
it's so important, I think, conveying your value to a client and opening that meeting, that conversation with them. And you need to first start the conversation, and that's a huge part of it. Absolutely. It's
compared for those who are like wondering what we're talking about, to give a little bit of a compare and contrast. When we'd be talking to a bride that, say, when we were younger and we were in our 30s, early 30s, or even in our late 20s, and if we'd be talking to a bride in her 20s at that time compared to a bride today, what were some of the things that the bride would have maybe been looking for then? And Dan, this sort of even fit when you were starting. What the brides that you talked to when you first started out compared to what we're talking to with brides today, what kind of things are different between the two? Mitch, go ahead and start us out. Give Dan a minute to think.
Yeah, so I think the game has changed so much in the last 10 years. If you look at, 10 years ago, what brides were looking for, got to go back. That was 2005, 2006. So to me, that was the cusp of creating unique and different, versus, again, today's bride, I find many of them are still looking for unique and different. Others are looking, hey, I just want you to rock my party. And yet others still are just of the mindset of, you know what, I just don't want to have any worries on my wedding day. So you need to find out what's them. What is their biggest concern? What is their biggest issue with their wedding planning, and how can you help them? Our slogan for a long time was less worry, more fun. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was our niche, right? There's a lot of guys that show up and play music and rock a party and bring out the glow sticks and, everything else. There's nothing wrong with all those things. But our niche was creating amazing moments that are remembered forever. And ironically enough, I interviewed a gentleman who was looking to apply for a position at our company. And I did his twin brother's wedding back in 2007.
Okay.
And he noted about how what we were doing back then was so cutting edge for our market especially, and no one had ever seen that before at a wedding. And so it was something that he thought was amazing. And he was like, wow, I can't believe this exists, So again, just depending on what you're looking for, what they're looking for, and asking those questions about what it is that's truly going to make their day.
Dan, have you found a difference between how you were selling or what the brides were looking for 10, 12 years ago?
Definitely. For what I saw, a lot of big difference. I mean, I really kind of just got into the wedding market about 15 years ago. So if we're talking about 10, 12 years ago, I was still kind of early on in my even what I was comfortable doing. So a lot of what I was doing at that time was, I'm the cheap guy. Or I'm not too cheap, but I'm not too expensive. So it was kind of really still in that learning process. But what I found a lot of times was people were wanting to get away from the cheesiness factor. I was finding that a couple of the guys in my market were doing the interactions, but the interactions that instead of being like here, were like, I can't even stay in the window here. They're way over the top to the point that people were just kind of like, I don't want that. And so I actually have in my brochures, I can remember for a couple of years when I'd hand them out at wedding expos, I would put on there, look, if you're looking for the guy with the funny hats, the blow up instruments, the boas, and is going to be out there on your dance floor as the center of attention for the whole night, that's not me. And I, and that was one of those things I kind of set myself as, I'm not that guy. I'm not going to do those kind of things. I'm not going to be those type of people. And one, because I wasn't comfortable doing it, but two, because I knew there was a niche on the other side. There's 3 or 4 guys doing that side. So it was like, well, hey, if I can do this other one, I'm going to appeal to some other people. Now, exactly what Mitch is saying, over the past 10 years, you can see, they still don't want the cheesiness, but to say I'm not the cheesy guy, instead of being 3 or 4 guys, we're down to 1 who's still trying to hold on to that as a shtick, and it's just sad. But what I'm finding now is that they're wanting that comfort factor. They're wanting you to sit down and talk to them and just kind of get a feeling. And I've actually taken a lot of what Mitch has said over the other seminars that I've kind of listened to you and really appreciated. When I've started talking with brides, I'm getting that feeling. I'm getting, hey, let's just chat a little bit. Let's get to know each other. Let's find out what you're looking for, and let's put you at ease.
Sure. You mentioned, Dan, you were kind of alluding to the the cheesy DJ thing. Kind of those guys that are still doing that are kind of not as popular, we'll call it. That's one of the not specifically the cheesy DJ thing, but that's one of the things I think as we've matured in the industry, as getting more experience, what have you, is that we've almost kind of changed our clientele. Mitch, would you kind of agree that has happened over your years of experience, that you've kind of maybe evolved, your client base has changed?
Yes, absolutely. But that also came from me not wanting to do the same old. Mm-hmm. It was funny. I was talking to this with another applicant actually today, ironically enough. She asked about, well, where do you get your drive, or what inspired you to go this direction?
Right.
So that was a very interesting question from an interviewee.
Yeah.
But the reality was, back in 2005, 2006, I was tired of doing the same old wedding, same old event, with the same exact stuff and the same exact thing and the same exact this. And so I found, ironically enough, I found Disc Jockey News. I found Disc Jockey America Radio. And those two things propelled me to look up Mark Farrell, and I found Bill Herman, and we started chatting and just snowballed into throwing myself into the artistry of the performance and studying more Gittimer and the artistry of the sales side and all those things to just create something unique at each event. And I get tired of doing the same old thing. And I'm like, there's got to be something more than just same old event in the same weekend. And it was burnout factor. And it was like, okay, I need something. And so that's what going again was, Disc Jockey News and DJA and Mark and Bill and everybody else I contacted at that point in time. And it's just been snowballing ever since. And so if you're burnt out, find a mentor, find that spark, or get out, one of the two.
And I want to build off that a little bit, Mitch. Now, you mentioned that, of course, you changed yourself, and that ended up changing your clients. In your market today, and this is there's actually a point to where I'm heading with this, guys. In your market today, are there still DJs out there who are out there because there are clients who basically are comfortable with that same show every weekend?
Yes.
and Dan, in your market, there's still some clients out there that would still hire the guy who does this cheesy thing and he's charging next to nothing. But in your case, Mitch, you went and improved, you grew, you changed, and you found that there was a market for that higher level service.
Yes. Well, I want to clarify something. Just because that DJ is doing the same old, and he's what we would consider the cheesy stuff, right? I would argue that, that's okay.
Yeah, certainly it is. It is.
There's a market for that. But I also discovered that there is a market for the high end too. And there is a market to cater to couples that truly don't want to worry about anything. I tell all of our couples, we have two goals for your event. Number one, I want the two of you and your parents to feel like guests at your own wedding reception. And number two, I want your guests to leave saying, wow, that was so much fun. It was so Amber and Joe.
Right.
That's it. Those are your goals. We're probably a right fit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so that kind of starts the conversation going. And yes, there are those clients out there, even in a town of 12,000 people.
Exactly, and this is a problem that I have people asking questions and talking about. No, I can't do it in my market because everything is here, and I can't do it in my market. And I think in both your examples and cases is that you've been able to show that it isn't that way. That ceiling isn't there, unless of course you put it there.
Yes, if you put it there, yes.
We've got some chat things going on.
Take it.
Yeah.
All right.
That's okay. That's okay because this is part of our engaging with those who are asking questions and being involved with it. And this is for those of you who are watching this 2 or 3 nights from now. You're not going to see the chat room, so you're going to wonder what in the world are they talking about. Yeah,
Copy and paste it into a text file. With it.
all they're doing is all of a sudden glaring. But I think
no, I think what I find funny is the line that Mitch used is one that I actually use and have used for years now as the whole, my goal is to make you guess at your own reception. I just kind of feeding off some of the chat stuff rather than typing it. I'm just going to say it. But,
yeah, go ahead.
The whole when I talked about the interactive and I talked about the cheesy, I know interaction is not cheesy. I mean, I know it can be, obviously, and that's kind of what I'm referring to is some of these guys that I've seen week in, week out. I mean, I go to a wedding expo, and I know he's not watching because he would never watch this, so I'm going to blast him on this. But go to a wedding expo, and the guy sitting there playing a saxophone along with some music and drowning out everybody, and then 5 seconds later puts on a sombrero hat and tries to lead a conga line. And we're not talking about, I mean, there's ways to do that and be classy, and he's just not. And it's just one of those things that's just like, it just drives me crazy. So the line of, being guests at your own reception is one thing that I've used for a while, because I don't want to be the center of attention. I want them to know who I am, because they came up and asked me, or I want them to see me and, hey, that guy stuck out. So they go and they ask somebody. I don't want to be the center of attention and be the one that they're going to go, oh, that was, what's his name? That was Dan, because he said his name 8,000 times and he did something that was so obnoxious that I'm not going to forget him for that reason.
And even though, as you mentioned earlier, you talked about a couple of things like the saxophone and the sombrero. Of course, those are Mitch's favorite routines, so now you've just taken that from him. But the idea...
Are we back to Mexican jokes?
No, we're not there yet. We're waiting for Juan to jump on. We save those for when Juan's here.
What time does 2 get on? No.
But for those of you out there watching, that people define cheesy when it comes to entertaining differently, and you guys have probably run into that yourself, where one bride will see a plastic blow-up guitar, and she's like, oh my God, that's cheesy. Then you might have 4 brides in a row who are thinking, that is a party waiting to happen right there. It varies, and it really becomes something to get back to really what we started talking about is communicating and talking to these younger brides and finding out where they're at, what they're interested, where they want to go with their night. Mitch, how much of that conversation do you have over the phone? How much of that conversation can you do via some sort of printed or typed communication? And how much of it is really only conveyed face-to-face?
I will communicate in whatever medium they want to communicate in. I just sent a groom a text message literally this evening as well. But reality is I do much better face-to-face. I do second best over the phone, and third is text. I think there's so much lost in the email text form of communication. You don't hear inflection. You don't hear intonation. You can't see a smile. Sure, you can write the emoji or whatever, but it's not the same. And it's so important, I think, that we go back and look at how they're communicating with us, and not just listening with our ears, but listening with our eyes, and watch of email. What kind of vocabulary are they use their email address from? Is it from a university? Is it from their business? Is it a made-up one for their wedding? Those are all clues that will tell you how to communicate with her or him.
Very much so.
And it's important to dig deep on that too a little bit, I think.
Dan, now,
did I answer your question, John? I'm sorry if I did.
No, you did. You kind of gave us a little bit, on that. Dan, you work, of course, in the school system, so you're working with teenagers, younger. You're like the tweeners, right?
No, I'm 9 to 12.
Oh, you're up in a teenage. So yeah. as these kids are getting to, you've been working with them for the last few years. What are some of the things when you're trying to communicate with them and you see their communication styles? What are these kids most comfortable communicating? Is it a face-to-face, or are this, as we're seeing from sometimes this is communication for them? What did you notice?
When we're talking about the high school age, it's definitely texting. I mean, and it's to the point where they're as comfortable keeping it in front of their face as they are in their lap. I mean, we have a policy in our school where up until this year, it was they couldn't have their cell phones on from 8:03 to 3:06. That's when our school day is, and that was as much of a joke as it was anything else, because you could walk through the halls, and if you snuck in, you looked in anybody's classroom, you could see them underneath the desk texting away. It's one of those things where, Mitch, I find it interesting. I agree with you 100% that it's so much harder to try and convey in email and text. But I've also found that if I can get that personable touch, whether it be through email, whether it be through text, even Facebook message has been starting to pick up for me, that I then get them to the meeting. It's almost like for a while, I was trying to, any email that came in, I was like, hey, let's meet, let's talk, I'll buy you coffee, whatever. And a couple years ago, that was great. They were all about it. Now it's like I've got to go through at least probably 4 to 5 back and forths before they're, hey, let's meet. And it's not even just talking about price. It's just one of those, right. Hey, let's talk about a little bit about the wedding. And you know what? I also use that because if I'm going to set up a meeting with my schedule, sometimes it's 3-4 nights, maybe even a week later before I'm going to be able to meet with them. So if I wait for that meeting, I've lost out. Just because, I don't want to say definitely, but I've lost out on the opportunity to make that connection, to start that conversation, so that I at least get that meeting. Because if I push for the meeting and I wait, they called somebody else or they emailed somebody else, and he or she was able to meet with them the next night. Oh, by the way, sorry, we no longer need to have our meeting. Yep. I decided to hire my DJ. And it's like, right. We didn't even talk yet. So now I'm just like, let's take care of the email. I haven't gotten the texting too much. I have that on my business card, but usually that's for clients that have already contacted me.
The reality is someone else made the connection.
Yeah.
So you have to find out, how can you make that connection faster? Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you ask the question, how did you hear about us? To me, that's always the warm fuzzy. That'll find out where they're at in the process. Oh, we saw you at so-and-so's wedding. We loved you. We want to know more about it. Or, you know what, we're just Google and found, Marquette DJ or whatever that your city is. And then boom, they call, 20 other DJs. That's okay. But you got to have that connection. That's why sales skills is so important, and just being real with them and connecting with them on that friendly manner. That's why, researching your client, that's really part of the first step I teach in the Sales and Solutions workshop, is researching your client so you can find out, not to manipulate them. That's not the point, but know how to communicate with them more effectively to get a stronger connection faster.
Go ahead. I'm curious about something, because you hit on something, and it's actually a question I've kind of had for you for a while now that I think about it. You talk about researching them. Do you find it very difficult when you start, even if you just do a Facebook profile search, do you find it difficult not to fall victim to the prejudging?
Prejudging is one of those things that you can't do, because you can certainly look at them to understand what you may think. Mm-hmm. But you can't sit here and say definitively this until you meet with that person face to face. And I don't want to prejudge, frankly. I've had one of my favorite weddings ever did. The bride came in on a fire truck, literally came in on a fire truck for the ceremony. And it was 3.5 hours away from my location here. It was in lower Michigan. And the reality is, I was about half the cost of the entire wedding. Had I prejudged that one, wouldn't have had that experience. I would have treated them differently. You have to approach every client with, how can I help you best? And, what are you looking for the most? And, what do you know about us as a company? That's the second question. How did you hear about us is the first. And what do you know about us as a company? Or, and that finds out where you're at and what their foundational level is for you, what they know about you as a company. And from there, I think I can move forward, and they know this about us, but they also need a minister. Maybe I can help them with that. Or they're looking for lighting, but hey, did you know we also offer this, and not to be, pushing those products, but just from a standpoint of maybe they need it, maybe they don't, and just getting a conversation with them about it. Prejudging, I don't think is a good thing.
I didn't mean it from that standpoint. I meant, do you find it hard, I guess, not to? I mean, because that's one of the things, when I start looking them up, and it's just like, okay.
Well, yeah, you're going to have those thoughts in the back of your mind, but I would encourage you not to go there you need to approach it from a clean slate and let them prove or disprove, what you may already think about them. Because in big, big boy sales world, right? People will take leads and use zip codes, and especially in major metropolitan cities, and you may weed out the ones that are in a lower budget area or clients that aren't necessarily typically your clients. You may weed those out from a bridal show, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay if you do that. You may miss one or two, but you got to play the numbers, right? The numbers are the numbers. And so there's some prejudging going on there. Is it right? No, but you're playing percentages at that point. Mm-hmm. So everyone's different how they approach it. I don't like prejudging personally. I try to avoid it when I can. Will I have a thought about them as a person based upon what I see? Yeah, of course. But I don't want to go into it thinking, because it's the same mind games we play with ourselves when we don't book a wedding or don't book an event for 5 days or whatever the case may be, and we go into like, haven't booked the last two, and you can't go into it that way.
Yep, desperation.
You got to be like the quarterback throws the pick. Guess what? Next set of downs, the clean slate. You got to start over. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can't be thinking about that interception. You can't be thinking about that lost sale. You got to be thinking about how can I help them.
And that's what I wanted to bridge off next year. We've got about a little over 5 minutes left, guys.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is good. This is good. How can I help you best was the phrase you initially gave us there, Mitch. How can I help you best? When do you kind of get to that point where maybe you're not what they're needing to for what is helping them best? I mean, those situations happen. How do you? And we kind of talked about a little bit of this on Saturday night. But for those who are watching and didn't get to see that, how do you handle situations like that without hurting feelings or stepping on toes?
Well, do you have referrals? Are you networked with a bunch of guys locally or gals locally that you can refer to? There's nothing wrong with passing out referrals, and maybe they're not a right fit, and that's okay if they're not a right fit. I certainly don't want to work for everyone with a checkbook, and I don't think Dan does either with your business model. And I'm sure some people in our chat room will agree with me or disagree, and that's okay. We're all our own unique people. But making a referral is all right. And I tell them, I said, look, I want to make sure that I can deliver exactly what you want. And this is a one-shot deal for you. It's not like you're buying a pair of shoes, you can't take it back. Your photographer can go back and edit in Photoshop. Your caterer can go back and fix a plate of food. We're live, baby.
Yeah, there's no second.
We're going without.
Oh, wait, everybody. We're going to do their first dance again because I forgot to say that line.
Do that. And so, I want to make sure it's the right fit for them and me. If I'm giving up my Saturday night away from my family, I kind of want to know that I like the people I'm going to work for and work with. And that's, a big shift too. You're working for your clients, you're working with your clients.
That's definitely a big part of it.
I always wonder how that, I'll be honest, I've never had to sit there and go, we're not a good fit. For whatever reason, it seems like the ones where I've not connected with, it solves its own problem. Mm-hmm. Now, looking back in the earlier days,
Dan, hang on. Would that be solved before you got to the meeting, or would that be like at the meeting? Then it's like, oh yeah, where have you found that you haven't been a good fit? Early enough, or at the meeting?
For me, it's been more. Well, I've had some email, but usually I would say the ones that the meeting usually takes care of that.
Okay.
At least for me, because I've never actually had to say it to a client, hey, we're not a good fit. Let me suggest you to John down the street here. I've kind of lucked out. I feel like when I do the meeting, we get to know each other so well that the ones that I'm kind of like, I don't know. Maybe it's an aura that I put off for myself about halfway through the meeting when I get a bad feeling that they're like, you know what, we don't want this guy either.
Yeah, you give them the teacher eye.
Yeah. but I guess. Yeah, I mean, if you make it, I don't want to say you make it uncomfortable, right. But I've never had to do that, and that's weird for me. So, go ahead, Mitch.
Frankly, it's rare for me too, Dan. It's totally rare for me to be like not a right fit. Normally, by that point, we can weed each other out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Have I had to turn someone down before? Yeah, but it's rare. Have I had to fire a client before? Yeah, but it's extremely rare. But the reality is, I don't want it to get to that point. Number one, and we're doing our best to not let it get to that point. I think it's a feeling out process both ways.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. And I think in this day and age, that's almost a more important fact, being that we're so interconnected in so many ways that if we have a bad experience with a client and we bull through that situation, that the way she or he or they can convey that displeasure in all different ways, shapes, or form, it's way, way not worth it to put them in that position and us in that position.
Well, in most cases, they're weeding you out before they even get there, because they're doing research on you. They're checking out your Facebook profile. They're checking out, your Instagram, your Pinterest. They're looking at all these things, and the reality, their websites. And if you're, it still blows my mind the number of business owners, not just DJs, business owners who rant about politics or religion on their social media. I'm like, you are losing so much business, in my opinion, or not so much business, but you're losing a certain percentage for sure. Well, I don't want to work for them anyway.
I love it when I see friends of mine who are DJs and make it a point to friend like every single one of their clients so they can tag them and everything else.
Yep. And
then rant and horrible grammar and everything that would be unbecoming of a business.
Yep.
It's like
grammar, GRAMMER, right?
Yep. Grammar.
Or
grammar. No, they're not even ER, just ends in an A. Grammar.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
And again, this is getting into a direction for another show, but the whole social media aspect of it and being careful of the public side that we put out there, but even some of the not so public side things that are, I love these, this Facebook post is blocked so brides won't see it. I'm not going to go rant on a post on Facebook or any social media, even if it's hidden, because you know what, gang, things have a way of finding their way out of those areas really, really quick.
What's a screenshot?
Yeah, exactly. How do you do a screenshot? Oh, those two buttons. Whoa, look at that. I can face. Yeah, that happens way too quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sexting issue, Arnaldo, he mentions that, and that's, unfortunately.
There's I'm going to put it in the chat. Never mind.
Okay.
Well, guys, we've got about a little bit less than a minute. Dan, you're not going to be seeing us in Mobile Beat here in a couple of weeks. I'm kind of bummed.
I tell you what, if you can convince my superintendent to let me out, I'm game.
Yeah, so I'm not afraid of your superintendent. It's your wife that I would have problems. She'd be the one that would beat us both up, and I'm afraid of her.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so we're going to leave you at home to help with the baby.
Alrighty.
That's important stuff. Mitch, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. You'll be down there in Las Vegas. Looking forward to it.
See you at Mobile Beat. Looking forward to being there on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. See you there.
Yeah, that's going to be a great time. And now we're going to get Arnaldo and Shaney and Jake hopefully coming back to us. This is the end of segment 2.